sorry, Mr. Adams. Please do go on. I believe you were not done explaining how your father and his fellow founders identified so fundamentally with their wealthy, white, ruling class privilege that they cannot identify with any other perspective, and particularly a perspective as different as a poor black underclass savage such as myself, and that therefore the profound lack of imagination in the North and the powerful economic forces in the South led to the current horror of more than 3 million enslaved men, women, and children living and laboring in a country that purports to be a bastion of liberty, freedom, and toleration. Am I right? I believe you are an abolitionist, a closet abolitionist, if you will.
Welcome to Black Arts Matter with Dallas Summer Musicals. I'm Jori Jackson, and today we have a special guest, J.R. Bradford. J.R., how are you?
I'm well, how are you?
I'm well. I'm happy to see you here, excited to have you.
It's been a while.
It's been a while. It's been a pandemic.
It's been almost 2 years, almost, like a few months away from, that's crazy.
It's crazy. So, J.R., tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, let the people know.
I classify myself as an artist, not just an actor. An actor, unit publicist, sometimes filmmaker, sometimes writer. You know, I just wanted to make sure that I was just covering all the bases as an artist. So if one slows down, like the quarantine did for us, we can go in other directions. So, yeah, Fort Worth native. But I got to Dallas as soon as I could. But yeah, the DFW has been home for the last, as an arts hub for me for the last 15 years. So yeah.
The range, everything. So I'm going to start off with the question with Black identity. What does that mean to and for you, or what does that look like to and for you personally?
Black identity for me, really, it means flavor. You know, a lot of being black is about, you know, they call it swag for guys. They call it, I guess, style or whatever for women. But it's that extra that we walk into. When we walk into the room, we bring a lot with us. We bring our ancestors with us. We bring what just happened to us. We bring our aunt's smile and our uncle's, lean, or whatever the case may be. But it always adds a level of character there to it that we also bring with us on the stage. And we get a chance to choose. Some people don't get that opportunity to choose what version of us that we bring with us in that way. So it's all about flavor. You know, just being a black artist is about flavor. A little extra there.
I love that. Yeah, walking into a room with your ancestors, as yourself, and presenting that in your work. So, as far as creative spaces and Black identity, do you feel like you've had the chance to express that and to exude that on stage and in the work that you've done, on or off stage?
Pre-pandemic, I would say no. I didn't get a chance to. But post-pandemic, that's completely different now. Because I think being a black artist in a white space or outside of a space that's not predominated by artists of color, there's a cultural blind spot that's there because you don't want to say anything, or the way we speak is going to be different when it's just us. And we call it code switching, but that's survival. But sometimes it keeps us from being judged in a different kind of way. But it's almost like when you're a black artist in a white space, you're trying your best to represent your race in a completely different way based on what they think. Because most of them don't, not most, but there are white artists who don't have any black friends. Not just knowing black people, but like, do you have black friends? In other words, have they been to your house? You know, that kind of thing. So there's sometimes an idea of what it's like to be black that they may have missed. And when you have that conversation with them and you bond with that individual, you could change the way they look at black men, women, or whatever the case may be. And I know that sounds like a crazy responsibility or a huge responsibility, but the reality of it is that's a part of it. It comes along with it. So, yeah, there was a time when I didn't feel comfortable being my 100% my black self, but there's a gray area there that you're still comfortable with, but so that you don't offend anyone in the room. And I feel like that's another thing that can be uncomfortable having to navigate. So it's a lot better now than it was pre-pandemic.
Have you ever felt like that hindered or had a major effect on your performance, even when you were on stage as the character, not necessarily JR, the black man, or the artist? Did you feel like it bled into your work, or were you able to divide it and just kind of go on with the show?
I would never allow it to get into the work. I was always gonna, once I got comfortable with this character, you're gonna see a different person anyway. So that I'd rather be judged by the way I carried myself when I walked into the room, the way that I spoke to you and I speak to everybody, getting there early enough to have conversations with the stage hands and just build that chemistry with them first, and just having those conversations, because they remember that. They remember the conversations and you constantly being there at the same time as the stage manager and having those conversations, and then just being a professional in that way. So no, I never let that get in the way. But I was never asked, how does it feel being the only black actor in this show? And I don't have to throw names out there. What shows, people can go back and look, and they remember he's the only black actor in this show. And I wonder what that's like. But they never asked me. And it gets back to me, but they never. I wish they would in the past, though, because I think it would have given an opportunity to have those conversations so that they can have an understanding of what that's like.
I'm sure you can tell the difference between those white colleagues or even non-black colleagues who you got a chance to connect with deeper, as opposed to the ones who either didn't bother to ask or probably didn't even look your way, let's be real. Was there a difference probably from the beginning of the show to the end? You're like, yeah, we connected. I think they see me, for who I am and not just, my color or my appearance. Was there a difference?
Oh yeah, from the table read. That's why I love table reads. That first initial meeting with everybody, and I usually on purpose sit to myself a little bit, just to kind of see who's going to gravitate, who's going to come, and I open myself up to them. So I don't force myself and my blackness onto anybody, because after we've had that conversation, and I'm probably in the dressing room with you doing makeup or whatever the case may be, you're going to get a different version anyway. But yes, every single time, that initial conversation at the first table read and at the cast party is completely different. And you look back at it, and every time you see that actor or meet that group of people, y'all go back to those experiences, So yeah, it's always different. It's always different. And I think that's why the grace is so important on both ends. You give them grace as a not knowing, because sometimes they don't know how to talk to us, and they have to feel it out. And sometimes you don't want to come off and you don't want to say anything to make them feel uncomfortable, because sometimes you just speaking, the way we speak to them could be over their heads, and because it's a different conversation.
Or maybe I should stay out of that and let them have
that. Yeah, and you can always feel it. And we won't talk about it right away, but later on it's like, you see how he was looking when we started talking about that. And you mentioned something about unseasoned chicken. They don't get that. They literally don't get it. Yeah. But it's like, yeah. So there is a language that we have, even in our body language that we have across the room when there's two black actors in the room, or an actor and actress that's of the same culture. It's just different.
Do you feel now, kind of in this era of the pandemic, 2 years later, especially after the height of the movement and everything, are the spaces shifting, as far as that connection with white or non-black colleagues?
I would say yes, but it's still eggshells for the most part. And I think because, number one, we haven't had any consistent communication in the arts since the movement really hit last year. So yeah, I think it's still eggshells because of that, and they're still trying to fill it out, you know. But the interaction is much better. They're much more nicer. And I'm not saying I've never experienced any overt or covert racism in the arts at all. But you hear the stories, and you put the name with the face, and you kind of put that in the back of your mind, like you're watching out for it at the same time, right? But now that those same individuals, they're much nicer now because they don't want to say the wrong thing or make the wrong joke or harken back to something that they said on a Facebook post when everybody was in the house, you know. So that's what. And when everything happened, I kind of looked and said, that's going to be interesting. When we get back outside, that's going to be interesting to see how they move. And for the most part, I hadn't seen most of them. And you had a few of our artists who really led some of those conversations in the community that they're no longer in the community anymore. They've moved on. But yeah, it's better, I will say. And I've done shows since quarantine in a few theater companies that aren't African American theater companies, and I have seen the shift.
What is something that you think that could be implemented for, I guess, people to just kind of feel like, hey, we can approach this person human to human. We're creating art together. So what is, I guess, advice or maybe a word that you could give to somebody who they want to do better, but they're scared or they're maybe intimidated or confused? What is something that you would want them to carry with them when they go into the rehearsal space or the green room or wherever?
So I did a film a few years ago. Actually, it's been a while. It's almost a decade ago, and they had this box where you can get on the box at any time. Any artist, an actor, a stagehand, whatever, could get on the box and say anything they wanted to say, good, bad, or ugly. But there was one specific actress who was always took that moment on that box to show gratitude. And the thing about it was that it made everybody feel comfortable because every time she got up, you knew she wasn't going to be upset about anything. She was going to show gratitude despite how she felt. She was going to say something nice about somebody in the room, and it always changed the temperature in the room. So I think that if theater companies or any art spaces, if they could just consider creating some kind of space for one specific artist or individual in the room to make an announcement or to show gratitude or to just put something positive into the air, it really changes. It changes the temperature in the room. It changes the way we work with each other when we know that there's a safe place for us to go and say what we need to say and to acknowledge each other. So I encourage healthy spaces or opportunities for us to disclose how we're feeling about certain things and just literally put the scripts away and just have a conversation, whether it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes, because now it's not the elephant in the room anymore. It's not something that we're all kind of whispering about. It's no longer, it makes it much easier for all of us.
Yeah, I agree. I think those type of, whether it's an exercise or like you said, a space, that bleeds into the show and the rehearsals when people, feel good about the company and the cast and the crew. Like it literally radiates, and from experience, I love that feeling going into the theater and having that process to just kind of let things out and just say, hey, that's how you were feeling that day, and that's okay.
I'll tell you something that I did experience recently. Bishop Arts Theater Center, they did Black Nativity. And we'd get together right before we started rehearsals and we did a check-in. We got into a circle and we did a check-in, one by one by one by one. And everybody had a different energy to them, but at the very end of the day, if they came in with something heavy, they were lighter by the time we even started, you know? So, you know, things like that. I mean, and there's several things that we can do. We can get very, very creative with it. I mean, even something as simple as having a radio in the room with music playing and somebody different gets the aux cord every single day before we start rehearsals. Yeah. It builds, it's like, man, somebody might play a song that may connect with the next actor who then they don't know each other. It's like, man, what do you know about that? Yeah. You know what I mean? So, I mean, just it could be, there's so many different ways. And I wish we would collaborate and get creative on that. So, yeah.
That's a good feeling to, not to walk in that way, but when you have that energy, like maybe there's a nod and it just kind of releases into the air by the time you leave the theater, that's a great feeling. Yeah. So it's Black History Month. Right. So we want to get into Black historical figures. Who is, and I know it's hard to narrow down to one, but who is one Black historic figure who has really inspired you artistically?
Let's see. There's so many that I can go with.
Well, who do you want to just really honor right now? Like maybe somebody you've been watching over the last couple of months, or?
I'm not even. You know what? I'm gonna go off the script here, and it's gonna be a local legend, Akeem Babatunde. Okay. Because you know recently, you know after the break of not being on stage and doing shows, you know, you think to yourself, man, do I remember some of this stuff? Akeem was in my head the entire time. Oh, you're not learning the language. Look at all those verbs. Come on, Jay, you feel me? He was in my head the entire time. But it took away the anxiety, it took away the self-doubt about what to do and just focusing on the words. So, yeah, he's one that, you know, I don't see very many people really championing him, and we've lost a few of our greats in our market, and I want to just I want to acknowledge him for that because he is one of the ones that is always in my head. I mean, even Phyllis Cicero, Phyllis would say stuff like, well, it's okay to have yourself a pity party, but make sure it has a curfew, you know? Yeah. Just, you know, I'm like, what? Yeah. It's okay to have a pity party, but make sure it has a curfew. That's profound because so much happens as an artist from your front door to the rehearsal door. Like it's so much that goes on, and you need to give yourself an opportunity to, you know, feel what you feel. And going back to what you said earlier about things to do to kind of release that, so we can just kind of come in and create that bond. So yeah, Akeem Babatunde, he's someone that I've looked at, and I learn something new about him every single time I talk to him. So yeah.
And when did you first connect with him, or when did he first like kind of capture your attention? Was it growing up, or was it like a certain show that you were like, this guy?
So it was a staged reading, and I was fresh. I didn't know what a staged reading was, but actually, he was getting ready to go into rehearsals for Gem of the Ocean at Jubilee. He wasn't even considering me for the role. He just heard about me, and I'd auditioned for Lost in the Stars, 2009 at Theater 3. And I didn't get booked, but he kept my information, and he called me up, and we did a table read for Gem of the Ocean before he put it up at Jubilee. And he made me think about things just in the table read alone. I mean, we didn't make it past the third page until maybe an hour or so into the read, right? And no breaks, right? But it gave a level of focus, and I knew, okay, this is what I'm getting ready to run into. And he has a New York edge to him that he's very adamant about not losing, you know? So if you have a desire to go to Broadway, whatever the case may be, that's something you can take with you. That's in your toolkit. So yeah, he's definitely one of the ones that, you know, I like to give him his flowers.
Yes, I'm glad that you honored Dallas legends because that's a historic figure.
Yeah.
You know, he's definitely had a big effect on this community. So kind of wrapping up things, I want to end with this question. If you could give any advice to little JR, and whether it be for artistic advice or life advice, what would you tell them, maybe something that they could use later?
I would tell younger JR to slow it down. I would always get a note. I would always get a note that I speak very fast and I move my hands a lot. You know what I mean? We know now. Now we know that's rooted in anxiety and so many other things that we shy away from. But I was out of control and I wanted to get it out. I wanted to get the information out and I wanted to get through things fast. Mike Schrader told me one day, he said, I'm going to give you a monologue that's going to make you very still. And later on, that the concept of stillness was constantly just kind of reverted back and instilled in me, like just be still and slow down. But I took that off of the stage and just in life, slow everything down. The best people, some of the best artists, some of the best craftsmen, they know how to slow it down in their head. You look at the best quarterbacks can read the defense and slow the game down in their head. And, LeBron talks about, his IQ is, slowing things down and kind of seeing the floor, I think it's a huge lesson in life, period. But just slow everything down. And that's why I think it's one of the reasons why I have these habits of taking these photos backstage in the process, because it's process before product. But you can't enjoy that unless you really slow it down. And just put the phone on vibrate, put it upstairs in the dressing room, sit in the green room and just talk. Because those stories that I lay on everybody is because I've had a chance to get there and really take in the entire process. Because we're the lucky ones. We get a chance to get paid to do what we love every single day. So I would tell young JR to slow down. Just enjoy it. Enjoy the process. Process before product is what I would tell him.
And on that note, thank you so much, JR. It's been so great speaking with you, and we will just have you back at any time. Thank you so much for joining us for DSM's Black Arts Matter series, and we will catch you next time.